hold, the bitcoinhold.com. The Bitcoin self-custody is the whole. Find the strength inside your soul. Your the bitcoinhold.com.
You know, historically, when we think about securing wealth, the mental model we all default to is just incredibly physical.
Right. It's very binary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You buy a gold bar, you put it in a heavy steel safe, you lock the door,
Yeah.
and that's basically it.
It's like, yeah.
It's either in the safe or someone stole it. The physical boundary is the entire security model.
And honestly, it is a comforting model. Like, human beings just intuitively understand physical denial of access.
Right, a thick wall of steel makes sense to our primitive brains.
Exactly. But wealth as pure information, that demands a completely different paradigm.
And that is exactly what our sources are pointing to this week on the Bitcoin Hole. Welcome to this week's report, everyone. We are doing a deep dive into the massive and honestly sudden maturation in how we custody Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's shifting fast.
For a long time, we really tried to force that old steel safe model onto this new digital reality. Like, we just wrote 12 words on a piece of paper, shoved it in a fireproof box,
Yeah.
and, just hoped a flood wouldn't destroy our life savings.
Which is just static hoarding when you think about it.
Yeah.
And what we are analyzing in this week's report is the necessary evolution from that static hoarding to active operational security.
Right. Our mission today is to cut through the noise and look at the latest major updates in wallets, the launch of these active physical data havens for inheritance. And this is a crazy part. The deep tech infrastructure being built right now to protect the network from quantum computing threats, like decades down the line.
The tooling is improving at an absolute blistering pace.
It really is. But as we parse through this week's developments, we definitely have to stay grounded.
Always.
Because as these tools get incredibly smooth and convenient, there's always that strict trade-off between convenience and absolute sovereignty.
100%.
So let's start with the tools most people interact with every single day, right? Mobile wallets.
Good place to start.
So Blue Wallet released version 8.0.1 this week, and they introduced this feature called private push notifications.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Right, and on the surface, that sounds like a minor toggle in the settings menu, but the mechanism behind it actually fixes a massive privacy leak.
It fixes a metadata leak that, honestly, the vast majority of mobile users are just completely blind to.
So break that down for us. What is actually leaking?
Well, when you hold your own keys on a mobile wallet and someone sends you Bitcoin, the app is usually asleep in the background, right? To save your phone's battery.
Right.
So for your phone to actually wake up and buzz with a notification, the app's server has to route a message through Apple or Google's centralized push notification servers.
Wait, so Apple and Google are acting as the middleman for your financial alerts?
Precisely. I mean, they do not have your private keys. Your funds are completely safe.
Right.
But they can see the push payload.
Wow.
And historically, that payload included the transaction amount and the specific wallet data.
You're kidding.
Nope. So big tech is just sitting there logging exactly when you receive funds, how often you receive them, the timestamps.
Building a shadow profile of your financial velocity.
Exactly. More marketing data for the tech giants.
That is wild.
Yeah.
So Blue Wallet's update essentially blinds Apple and Google then.
Yeah, it redacts the payment details from the push payload, so big tech just sees a generic wake-up alert.
Ah, I see.
They don't see the amount, they don't see the origin. It stops that financial profiling dead in its tracks.
That's incredible. And privacy wasn't the only focus in this release, actually. They also added support for BCUR version 2 air gap scanning.
Which, for anyone using a hardware wallet with a camera like a Keystone or a OneKey, is just a massive usability upgrade.
What exactly is BCUR version 2?
So it stands for Blockchain Commons Uniform Resources.
Okay.
It is essentially a standard for animated QR codes.
Oh, right, where it flashes on the screen.
Yeah. Instead of one static image, the QR code rapidly cycles through different frames.
Like a flipbook.
Exactly like a flipbook. And that allows you to pass really complex, data-heavy transactions through a camera lens without ever connecting a USB cable to your laptop.
And speaking of avoiding cables, Bull Bitcoin Wallet just dropped their 6.100.2 update, which integrates NFC tap to sign for the Cold Card MK4 and MK5.
That's a huge shift in UX.
It is. Because, like, using old air-capped workflows used to feel like operating a 1980s submarine, right?
You aren't wrong.
I mean, physically moving micro SD cards back and forth, typing in long hexadecimal strings on a tiny screen.
It was stressful.
You felt like a sonar operator double-checking screens in the dark just to send a transaction.
Yeah, definitely not within everyone's reach back then.
Right. But now, with NFC, it feels exactly like modern tap-to-pay at a coffee shop.
Yeah.
You just craft the transaction on your phone, you tap the cold card to the back of the device, the cold card signs it in isolation, and you tap it again to broadcast.
Super smooth.
But wait, let me push back on this for a second. Isn't this a massive contradiction?
How so?
The whole point of an air gap is physical isolation. So the moment you introduce a radio wave, like NFC or Bluetooth, to a hardware wallet, aren't you just trading true sovereignty for coffee shop convenience?
That is the exact debate raging in the security community right now.
I bet.
And it really requires first principles thinking to resolve it. Like, what does an air gap actually achieve?
Right.
The objective is not to isolate the hardware in a physical vacuum. The objective is to ensure the private key never touches an internet-connected environment.
Okay, sure.
So the vulnerability isn't the transmission medium. Whether that's a copper wire, an SD card, a camera reading a flashing QR code, or an NFC radio wave, that part doesn't actually matter.
Wait, so the vulnerability is the data itself?
It is the data payload, yeah, and how the hardware's secure element processes that data.
Interesting.
A properly designed hardware wallet, which Coldcard is definitely known for, treats absolutely any incoming data as highly adversarial.
So it doesn't trust the phone at all?
It doesn't matter if it comes via NFC. The secure element strips away the transmission method, parses the raw transaction, isolates it, and then categorically refuses to apply the cryptographic signature until a human being physically presses the confirmation button on the device itself.
Ah, I see. So the boundary is logical and cryptographic, not just physical.
Right.
If the firmware parsing engine is robust, NFC is effectively just a faster carrier pigeon delivering a sealed envelope.
Exactly. Though, your skepticism is completely warranted. Every new interface, even a carrier pigeon, is a theoretical attack vector.
Right, it's a new door.
Exactly. Which is why a subset of hardcore users still strictly prefer the SD card method. You can physically see the file, you can audit its size, and there are no invisible radio waves bouncing around.
Yeah, it is all about knowing your own threat model.
Absolutely.
Now, while we're looking at wallets pushing better standards, Wasabi Wallet made a very aggressive move this week with version 2.8.1.
They really did.
They are now forcing Taproot receive addresses by default.
Which is a textbook example of open source developers just enforcing better network hygiene.
Yeah, because Taproot was a soft fork that activated way back in 2021.
Right. And it uses the most scalable private script type available on Bitcoin. It makes complex transactions look identical to standard single signature sends.
But a staggering number of legacy wallet providers and even major exchanges just drag their feet on upgrading.
Yeah, they did.
They still don't support sending Bitcoin to the new BESH 32-meter address format that Taproot actually requires.
Because technical debt is cheaper to ignore until it breaks something?
Right. So by forcing Taproot by default, Wasabi is explicitly shifting the pressure onto them.
Exactly. When a Wasabi user tries to withdraw funds from a lazy exchange, the withdrawal will fail.
And then the user complains to the exchange.
Yep. And the exchange is forced to upgrade their infrastructure. It is a bold, necessary move that ultimately benefits the privacy and block space efficiency of the entire network.
Love to see it. Though, fixing network privacy doesn't help much if your house burns down.
Well, no.
We've talked about the day-to-day transaction tools, but the sources this week highlight a complete revolution in how we handle the physical reality of our keys.
The long-term storage side of things.
Right. Backups and inheritance are usually the weakest links in self-custody.
Because the human element is always the weakest link.
Exactly. So CoinKite just opened reservations for a device called Arca. Have you seen this?
Oh, yeah.
It is a physical digital safe designed specifically for secrets. Seed words, recovery codes, multi-sig configurations, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's pretty hardcore.
The hardware specs on the Founders Edition are wild. They aren't just using off-the-shelf Android parts for this.
Yeah, definitely not.
It runs a FreeBSD host, an ARM Cortex-M33 security controller, dual secure elements, an internal uninterruptible power supply, and active tamper detect circuits.
It's basically a bunker in a box.
Right. So for anyone who hasn't stared at a hardware spec sheet lately, why does all of this specific obscure hardware actually matter?
Well, it matters because of the threat model of physical backups.
Okay.
The problem with just stamping a metal plate and putting it in a drawer is that it cannot defend itself.
Right, it's just inert metal.
Exactly. If someone finds it, they own your Bitcoin.
Right.
So CoinKite is building Arca to give your root cryptographic material a dedicated home, but with layers of active intelligent defense.
So what does an active tamper detect circuit actually do in practice?
It means the device is constantly monitoring its own physical integrity, even if it's sitting unplugged in a safe.
Wow.
Yeah. If an attacker tries to pry the casing open, or say they use a microscopic drill to get into the memory chip to extract the seed, the device actually senses the intrusion.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And the moment that circuit is broken, the device instantly zeroes out the keys.
It permanently self-destructs the data.
It permanently self-destructs to protect the funds.
That is amazing.
And because it runs on FreeBSD, which is a highly specific, stripped-down operating system, standard malware simply doesn't know how to interact with it.
Okay, but hear me out. A self-destructing box in my closet is still a single point of failure.
True.
If my house floods, the device might protect the keys from a thief, but I still lose my Bitcoin because the box is ruined.
Which brings us to the real breakthrough with Arca, which is the swarm concept.
Okay, this completely blew my mind when I read the report.
It's so cool.
You can buy multiple Arca boxes and geographically distribute them. But it actually goes further than that, right?
Yeah. You don't even need to own all the boxes yourself.
Right. A trusted friend can host your encrypted backup as a blind tenant on their Arca, and you can host theirs on yours.
Because it leverages client-side encryption.
Okay, explain that.
So the data is encrypted before it ever leaves your device. Your encrypted tenant lives on your friend's box in another city. They cannot see your seed phrase, they cannot access your data, and you cannot see theirs.
So if a fire destroys my house, I don't lose my wealth because my encrypted backup is safely sitting on my friend's Arca box across the country.
Exactly. You just spin up a new device, authenticate, and pull the backup.
The FrostSnap team posted a brilliant quote on Nostra this week that captures this ethos perfectly.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah, they wrote, "Gold bars have to exist somewhere. Bitcoin does not."
It's such a great way to put it.
Emphasizing that money shouldn't live at a single geographic location.
Right.
But let me play devil's advocate here. By building heavy, expensive physical hardware boxes and utilizing these collaborative custody networks, aren't we just recreating traditional bank vaults and trust funds out of silicon?
I mean, it looks structurally similar on the surface, which is why that critique pops up a lot. But the first principle's difference is absolute.
How so?
In a traditional bank vault or a trust fund, you are ceding central control. You require permission to access your own wealth.
Right. You have to ask the bank.
And if the bank manager says no or a court freezes the trust, you have nothing. With tools like Arca or collaborative custody protocols, you are distributing trust cryptographically.
So it's sovereignty through math, not legal contracts.
Exactly. No one can deny you access to your blind tenant data, and no one can spend it on your behalf.
So you are creating extreme physical resilience without ever giving up the ultimate cryptographic authority over the keys.
That's the goal.
Which brings us to the ultimate test of that authority, right? Inheritance.
Oh yeah, the hardest part.
Kiba released massive updates this week addressing this.
Yeah.
They added a 180-day key health check cycle and a new letter to the attorney feature.
Because a seed phrase alone is just a terrible inheritance plan.
It is arguably negligent at this point.
It really is. If you pass away and leave your family a 24-word seed phrase, but it happens to be part of a 2 of 3 multi-sig setup, and you didn't leave them the derivation paths or the wallet policy or the locations of the other hardware signers.
Those funds are effectively burned.
Completely burned.
Let's actually give the dumbed-down version of a derivation path for anyone newer to the space.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I like to think of the seed phrase as the master key to an infinite hotel.
I like that.
So the seed gets your heirs into the lobby of the hotel, but the derivation path is the specific room number where the Bitcoin is actually stored.
Right.
If they have the key to the lobby, but they don't know they need to go to room 44,000,006, they will just stare at a zero balance and assume the money is gone.
That is a perfect analogy. The context of the setup is just as important as the cryptographic key itself.
Exactly.
So Keeper's letter to the attorney generates a physical document that includes the recovery key, the signer locations, and the exact wallet policy. All the context an heir or an executor needs to actually navigate that infinite hotel.
Spectre DIY also launched a free, completely offline inheritance planning tool this week. for the exact same reason.
Yeah, it forces you to document the operational reality of your setup without ever typing it into a cloud-connected computer.
And honestly, if you are listening to this right now and you are currently building your own estate plan, which you absolutely should be, you need to check out the Inheritance Services Comparison feature on thebitcoinhole.com.
It's super helpful.
We built it specifically to help you evaluate all these different collaborative custody and inheritance tools side by side.
Right, because there are a lot of options now.
Exactly. It breaks down what Keeper, Spectre, Unchained, and others actually offer, so you can map out the safest way to pass your keys securely to your heirs.
Highly recommend.
It is a critical resource to ensure your Bitcoin outlives you, without turning your death into a terrifying cryptology puzzle for your grieving family.
Seriously. Because a first-rate security setup is functionally useless if it effectively becomes a cryptographic tomb for your purchasing power.
Wow, yeah. And speaking of the future, generational wealth implies that the network actually survives for generations.
It does.
So let's zoom out from the human lifespan to the lifespan of the Bitcoin protocol itself. Because for self-custody to matter to your grandchildren, the underlying infrastructure must remain private today and unbroken tomorrow.
100%.
And a huge part of that privacy relies on node sovereignty.
Yeah, and the mempool.space updates from the sources this week highlight this perfectly.
So walk us through that. What's the risk with mempool.space?
Well, almost everyone in the space uses mempool.space to check if their transaction is confirming, right?
Right, it's the standard block explorer.
But if you are using the public website to paste in your transaction ID or check your balances, you are leaking your IP address.
Wait, so you are handing a centralized server the direct link between your physical internet router and your financial transactions?
Yep. The public site is a fantastic resource, but it is effectively a massive surveillance vector if you use it carelessly.
Wow.
Which is why running your own personal instance of mempool.space on a node at home, something like a MyNode, is basically becoming a baseline responsibility for self-custody.
And this ties directly back to the hardware tools we were talking about earlier, too. ColdCard has this feature called push text.
Oh, I love push text.
Right. So after you craft and sign a transaction offline on the ColdCard, the device encodes that signed transaction into a URL.
Yeah.
And if you have your own mempool.space instance running on your home node, you just scan that URL with your phone, and your node broadcasts the transaction directly to the global network.
Exactly. You aren't outsourcing your judgment, you aren't relying on a Block Explorer's third-party server, and you aren't leaking your IP address to a company.
It is just an incredible feeling to craft a transaction offline, sign it, and push it through your own sovereign hardware without asking a single entity for permission.
Total sovereignty.
But what good is a sovereign node if the cryptography securing the entire network is fundamentally broken?
Ah, right. The quantum threat.
Yeah, that brings us to the Blackstream research initiatives regarding a post-quantum Bitcoin.
This represents the absolute frontier of adversarial first principles thinking.
Right. Because quantum computing is a theoretical threat to the elliptic curve cryptography that secures every Bitcoin wallet today.
Exactly.
But the sources this week were very clear on the current reality, right? Today's best, most advanced quantum hardware can barely factor the number 21.
Yeah.
As in 3 times 7.
That is correct. To break Bitcoin's elliptic curve signatures, a quantum computer would use something called Shor's algorithm.
Okay, what is that?
Well, without turning this into a quantum physics lecture, elliptic curve math relies on the fact that it is incredibly easy to multiply massive prime numbers together to get a public key.
Right.
But it is practically impossible for a classical computer to reverse the process and figure out the original prime number.
Which represent your private key.
Exactly. So Shor's algorithm acts as a theoretical shortcut to reverse that math, but it requires highly stable error-corrected qubits.
Right. And factoring 21 is a far cry from factoring the unimaginably massive 256-bit numbers Bitcoin uses.
Yeah, we are structurally decades away from a machine capable of doing that.
So I have to ask then, if quantum computers are currently struggling with basic grade school math, why are developers spending so much time and the Bitcoin Security Consortium pledging $15 million in funding on this right now? Shouldn't developer time go toward fixing immediate UX issues?
I hear that argument a lot, but it fundamentally misunderstands how cryptography is deployed at a global scale.
Okay, how so?
Cryptography hardens over decades, not months. You cannot wait until a viable quantum threat materializes to begin building the defense.
Especially on a decentralized consensus network worth over $1 trillion.
Exactly. If you wait until a quantum computer can reliably factor a 256-bit key, it is already too late. The network would be compromised while developers were still arguing over the upgrade path on GitHub.
Because upgrading Bitcoin requires years of rigorous debate, testing, and node adoption.
Bitcoin's security model demands proactive defense. So Blockstream Research is focusing on this heavily, and they recently proposed a new opcode called OP check Schrodin CS.
Which sounds like absolute alphabet soup.
It does.
What does that opcode actually do?
It introduces an optimized hash-based signature scheme.
Okay.
The beauty of a hash-based signature is that it relies on the exact same underlying math as Bitcoin mining SHA-256.
Oh, interesting.
And SHA-256 is already widely believed by cryptographers to be highly resistant to quantum attacks, unlike elliptic curves.
So wait, why don't we just use hash-based signatures already?
The historical problem is data size.
Block space.
Exactly. Quantum-resistant signatures are massive. The global standard currently proposed by NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, is incredibly bloated.
Right.
If Bitcoin adopted the NIST standard, those signatures would clog up the blockchain instantly. Block space is just too precious for massive signatures.
But this OP checksuring's proposal is tailored specifically for Bitcoin.
Yes.
The sources noted it is 7 times smaller than the NIST standard.
Which is huge.
Yeah, it makes post-quantum security actually viable within Bitcoin's strict 1 megabyte block size limits.
Furthermore, Taproot already has a quantum-safe path built into its script tree. The foundation for this post-quantum upgrade was actually quietly laid years ago when Taproot activated.
That is the elegance of Bitcoin's development culture. It moves slowly, deliberately, and with an eye constantly looking decades into the future.
Absolutely.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, today? Let's summarize the biggest takeaways from this week's report.
Sounds good.
First, air-gapped wallets are becoming remarkably seamless. With tools like BCUR animated QR codes and NFC tap to sign, we are achieving true physical isolation without the massive usability friction of the past.
Yeah, the UX is just light years ahead of where it was.
Simultaneously, privacy is being enforced as the default, whether that's Wasabi forcing Taproot standards across the industry, or Blue Wallet blinding Apple and Google from your push notification metadata.
Right. Second, the concept of backups and inheritance is moving rapidly from static metal plates in a drawer to geo-distributed active hardware swarms like Arca.
Which is just so cool.
It is. The market is finally internalizing the reality that cryptographic keys without proper context are completely useless to your heirs.
Exactly. And finally, while the quantum computing threat remains mathematically years away, the developers are actively future-proofing the protocol today with highly optimized hash-based signatures.
Because Bitcoin self-custody isn't just a product feature you toggle on your phone. It is a serious craft worth mastering. It is the craft of absolute ownership, and it demands constant vigilance.
Very well said. But I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder as you review your own security setup this weekend.
Okay.
As we build these incredible geo-distributed hardware swarms with active tamper circuits, deadman switches, blind tenants, and complex multi-sig inheritance policies spread across multiple jurisdictions.
It's a lot.
It is a lot.
All right.
Does the biggest threat to your wealth stop being a physical wrench attack?
This is the ultimate paradox of advanced security.
Could the ultimate danger become our own complexity? We are building fortresses so mathematically perfect and so structurally convoluted that the greatest risk isn't a hacker, a hostile government, or a thief.
Right.
The greatest risk is that we outsmart ourselves, forget a single critical piece of context like a derivation path, and accidentally lock our own families out of our Bitcoin forever.
It's a sobering thought.
The tools are clearly ready for the future. The question is, are we?
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. If you found this episode useful for keeping your self-custody skills sharp, please take a moment to rate the podcast and leave us a comment on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It really helps us continue bringing you these weekly reports. Stay sovereign, stay sharp, and we'll see you next week.
stay sovereign. The Bitcoin hold, the Bitcoin hold.